Okay, I lose everybody. Okay. Good evening. We're gonna start in about a minute or so.
I think Susan is in the attendees, and then Janita. Let me move them over. Or are you moving
Okay,
them over?
can you move them over? Thank you.
Yes. Hmm, I thought I just did Janita. Okay, there she is. Okay.
Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the unincorporated Alameda County Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee September meeting. This meeting is being conducted via teleconference, and a link to our teleconference guidelines can be found on the agenda. If at any time you need technical support, please call the Public Works Agency's IT Department Help Desk at 510-670-5755. If you wish to speak when we open to public comments, please raise your virtual hand so that we can call on you. And if you are joining us via telephone, you can raise your virtual hand by pressing *9. Please note, each member of the public who wishes to speak will have up to 3 minutes to make public comments. And I do want to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded. A quick overview of the agenda, call to order, roll call, we'll have public comment, approval of the minutes from the June 26, 2025 meeting. Tonight we'll have Carl Lau from the Public Works Agency's Road Design section give an update on the Higher Avenue Sidewalk Improvement Project, followed by a quick update from me, Mary Tony Maravilla, on the Ped Bike Trail Master Plan. And then we'll talk about rescheduling our December UCB PAC meeting. It is now 6:03, and this meeting is called to order. Okay, I'll do the roll call. Shanita Chu,
Present.
Bruce Jugi,
Yes, here.
Daniel Leary,
Here.
Susan Polivka,
Here.
Cindy Torres, absent. Crystal Wang,
Here.
and Michael Williams.
Present.
Hello,
Okay.
this is Cindy Torres. I'm here. I'm sorry.
Oh, hi, Cindy.
Okay.
Good to have you. Okay. Looks like everyone is here. Okay, so with that, we do have a quorum, and we will now move to public comment. Are there any comments from the public? Okay, Roy Taylor. Okay. You may speak. You have 3 minutes. Roy? Do you have comment?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay,
Not
I'll start your time now.
Thank you for the opportunity to make a comment. I'm going to make the same comment I make at the beginning of each and every of these meetings, which is about the membership of the committee, which is very unrepresentative of the community. The purpose of the committee, and it's written in the charter, is to garner community input. regarding implementation of the bike ped master plan. But when you look at the membership of the committee, you know, it's largely made up of people from other agencies, and in fact, one person that doesn't live in the unincorporated area. So it's kind of challenging to see how those people would actually provide community input. And I made this comment, I think we had the meeting in June in person. Mr. Williams gave me some feedback that he hears a lot from people in the community about the need for bike lanes. And that's great, but in fact, those very people making the comments would be much better to be the people here on the committee, because they are, you know, firsthand seeing the issues and firsthand have the desire to see the bike lane. So let's get those people on the committee and not require Mr. Williams to be the proxy for them. I think that would be much better. Also, I think last meeting, Ms. Wang made some contributions that were to do with the width of, I can't remember the project that was being discussed, but the width of the lane for the bus, or maybe the length of the bus stopping, I can't remember the name for it, bus, wherever the bus stops, or the height of the curb. No, that's not community input, yeah. You know, the comment that the lane needs to be 11 feet wide or 12 feet wide is not community input. That's kind of technical design and could be addressed in your day job directly with Public Works, because you guys in the agencies, that's your job. You should get together and coordinate and cooperate, and that's not the purpose of this. And as I've mentioned previously, Mr. O'Leary, hey, very, very thoughtful comments, but you don't live in an unincorporated area, and so you can't be representing the community. So Livermore has its own BPAC, and I'm sure you'd be very welcome and could make great contributions in that one. But let's maybe, you know, consider stepping down and allowing somebody from the unincorporated area of Livermore actually come and be part of the unincorporated BPAC. So I think, you know, big revisions of this committee are really needed to make it effective and avoid it just being this constant interagency agreement that really should be happening during the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Do we have any other public comments? Okay, seeing as there is none, we'll move on to the next item, which is the approval of minutes. We will approve the minutes from the June 26 UC BPAC. Does anyone have any comments or questions on the minutes from the June meeting?
I'll move for approval of the meeting minutes.
Okay. Dan,
Second.
Michael, second. Okay. Now I'll call on the members to vote. The members that were here at the meeting, last meeting. Bruce Doogie,
Yes.
Susan Oliska,
Yes.
Dan Leary,
Aye.
Crystal Wang,
Yes.
and Michael Williams.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The minutes from the June 26th meeting are approved. Okay. Next up, we have Carl Lau. I'd like to introduce Carl Lau. He's an associate civil engineer from the Public Works Agency's road design section, and he is here to give us an update on the Higher Avenue Sidewalk Improvement Project. Carl, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can share yours. And
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Tony. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And you guys can all see that. Cool. So good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. On behalf of Alameda County Public Works, we welcome you all to the Higher Avenue Sidewalk Improvement BPAC meeting. I'm Carl. I'm the project engineer for the Higher Avenue Sidewalk Improvement Project. In today's presentation, we will cover the project overview, project goals, and design alternatives for different classifications of bike lanes and the project schedule. We will be open to questions after the presentation, so please hold on to your question and we will be happy to answer them at the end. So the project is located on Higher Avenue in Castro Valley between Redwood Road and Center Street. As shown on the map, there are various schools, businesses, and point of interest within the vicinity. Our project goal for this project is to provide all users a safe and functional corridor that enhances walkability and accessibility, implements pedestrian and bicycle facilities, improves traffic safety, and amongst other things as shown on the slide here. The project is part of Alameda County's Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan, where it is listed as a prioritized sidewalk project. The plan recommends a Class 2 bike lane along Higher Avenue between Redwood Road and Center Street. So today, we want to talk about the alternative design options that we have considered to ensure we're making the best decision for the neighborhood and for the public. As you can see here in the table, we've looked into 4 different design alternative layouts. So in the next couple of slides, we'll take a look at all 4 of the design alternatives and kind of briefly describe what's included. So alternative one is a Class 2 bike lane on both sides. So from Redwood Road to Madison, this design provides a 5-foot wide sidewalk on both sides of the street for pedestrian access with a 3-foot wide utility and planter strip. It maintains a 7-foot wide parking lane on both sides, includes a Class 2 5-foot wide bike lane on both sides of the roadway, and a 10-foot wide travel lane. From Madison to Center, the design is similar, except it maintains a 4-foot wide sidewalk on both sides with a 3-foot wide utility and planter strip and features an 11-foot wide travel lane for the public transportation instead. This alternative helps organize the space more clearly for different type of road users. It's easy to understand where you belong and how to move. It's designed to accommodate a wide range of user comfort levels. The layout offers a more symmetrical layout when compared to other design alternatives, and providing narrow driver roads, it influences slower driving behavior. It's also built to work with the existing condition of the corridor, as we can see today. Alternative 2 is a buffered bike lane on both sides with parking removed on one side. So from Redwood Road to Center within the county right-of-way limits, this design will provide a 5-foot wide sidewalk on both sides of the street with a 3-foot wide utility and planter strip. It maintains a 7-foot wide parking lane, but only on just one side of the street. It includes a Class 2 5-foot wide bike lane with a 2.5-foot wide buffer and a 11-foot wide travel lane that's consistent across the whole corridor. Alternative 2 basically removes parking on one side of the street in favor for a buffered bike lane. Similar to alternative 1, it provides visibility and sets expectations of where users belong and where they should be. By providing the narrow driver roads, it also influences slower driving behavior, and it's also built to work with the existing condition of the corridor. However, an important trade-off that we need to look into with this alternative is the removal of on-street parking on one side. These parking spaces are currently used by both the community members and students, and parking is a valuable resource for both the community and students. With the implementation of California's new daylighting law, we're required to move parking spaces within 20 feet of any marked or unmarked crosswalk. So with this alternative, we want to keep in mind the amount of parking we will be losing for community members and students, especially with the new daylighting law. Alternative 3 is a Class 4 bike lane and is a non-standard feature. From Redwood Road to Madison, this design provides a 5-foot wide sidewalk on both sides of the street with a 3-foot wide utility and planter strip. It maintains a 7-foot wide parking lane, and it includes a Class 4 5-foot wide bike lane on both sides that's shared with a sidewalk, and a 10-foot wide travel lane. from Madison and Center, the design is similar, except it takes a foot off the class 4 bike lane and it turns it into a 4-foot wide bike lane on both sides. And the travel lane now will be widened from 10-foot wide to 11-foot wide to accommodate the public transportation along that route. Alternative 3 introduces a class 4 bike facility that's physically separated from vehicle traffic and shared with pedestrians on the sidewalk. The design is a non-standard feature that kind of aims to create a buffer between people biking and traveling vehicles. Like previous alternatives, it also provides a symmetrical layout. However, there are some important safety considerations to think about. When bicyclists are traveling downhill, they can essentially reach similar speeds to vehicles that are in the travel lane, and that can make the shared sidewalk space feel a little bit uncomfortable or even unsafe for users that are using the sidewalk as a form of travel. Additionally, because the parked cars are there, they may block the line of sight of drivers turning into the driveways, and they might not see the fast-moving cyclists in time, and vice versa. Bicyclists may not be able to react due to travel speed, especially since cyclists can travel at similar speed to the traffic. There are also budgetary concerns related to widening the existing sidewalk corridor. It's not matching the existing condition. So while this alternative provides separation, it also introduces new safety challenges and budgetary concerns that we need to consider. Alternative 4 is a uphill bike lane with a downhill sharrow. So from Redwood Road to Madison, this design will also provide a 5-foot wide sidewalk with a 3-foot wide utility and planter strip. It maintains a 7-foot wide parking lane, includes a class 2 5-foot wide bike lane with a 2-foot wide buffer next to a 10-foot wide travel lane going uphill. But on the downhill, it's a 13-foot wide sharrow on the downhill direction. So from Madison to Center, it's also essentially the same as above, except it includes a class 2 5-foot wide bike lane with a foot taken away from the buffer. So now the buffer is 1 foot wide, and now it'll be next to an 11-foot wide travel lane to accommodate for the transit in the uphill direction. Likewise, in the downhill direction, we're going to keep it at the same 13-foot wide sharrow towards the downhill. So alternative 4 proposes a split approach, a downhill sharrow and an uphill bike lane. The design is aimed to recognize the different needs of uphill and downhill riders. I can recognize that uphill cyclists typically move slower, while downhill riders can keep pace with the traffic. The alternative uses shared lane markings or sharrows on the downhill, but they don't really offer physical protection from traveling vehicles, which can discourage less confident riders. But the wider downhill lane also encourages drivers to speed or pass in lane of the cyclists when they're both being shared. As you can see, the design is also in an asymmetrical layout, which can cause confusion for users, where design guidances typically favor symmetrical layouts for better balance and predictability. So after considering all 4 of those alternatives, we're recommending alternative 1 for these reasons. It meets all multimodal design standards. It provides dedicated bike facilities. It retains the existing ADA compliant sidewalk, whereas an additional 1,600 linear feet of existing sidewalk will need to be demolished to accommodate for a wider shared path. It also achieves significant cost savings if we're comparing this alternative 3, where we are widening the sidewalk. Alternative 3 will cost at least $2 million or more when compared to the other alternatives. Lastly, alternative 1 generally accommodates the site topography and the grading challenges that we have across the site, along with the constraints of the existing conditions. The following is an anticipated project schedule. We haven't really had a chance to present to CVMAC yet, but we plan to request to be on the agenda on the next couple of months based off the feedback we received today from the BPAC team today. The following is the projected best case schedule for advertisement, contract award, and construction, and is always subject to change. So I hope you guys find this presentation informative, and thank you very much for your time for attending this meeting, and we will open the discussion for questions. So if you have any questions, please press the raise your hand button on the bottom panel, and we will call your name in the order which the requests are received. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl, for your presentation. I see that Bruce has his hand up. Go ahead, Bruce.
Yes, thank you, Carl, for your presentation. The first thing I want to say is, Public Works is supposed to build bike lanes that people want to use and not check a box and do what kind of like is the minimum standard, procedures. We know that bike lanes right next to car doors are dangerous. So that's why alternative 3 is so desirable. We also know that students already, when there's bike lanes, standard bike lanes like you see, like brand new bike lanes on Castro Valley Boulevard, and also the old bike lanes on Castro Valley Boulevard, we know that students insist on riding on the sidewalk. So, and there's a couple fallacies and a few things that you said, and one of them is that you have to go high speed down the hill on the class 4 facility, which is of course not true. And of course you can take the lane, because you can still take the lane, and that would be an option for those people who want to rip and roar down the hill. So, and you've already installed these, so there's precedent because you've already installed these on Mission Boulevard, East 14th, and and also in Llewellyn. So, there's, your logic is, I think it's just slightly flawed. So I think for sure the most likely bike lane for anybody to use, particularly the students, is going to be the one that's protected and away from cars, because people really don't want to, compete with cars. Cars are big and they're heavy and they're fast, and people just don't want to be even next to them. And then when you squeeze a cyclist in between a parked car with doors that open and a fast-moving 35-mile-an-hour, 40-mile-an-hour car, then it's just not very safe. So even if you pick alternative 1, that section from Redwood to Madison should include, you shouldn't be running the sidewalk wider. You should take that make the sidewalk the same all the way, and take that extra foot that you gave to the bus and give it to what would to the travel lane or the bike lane, either way, but preferably the bike lane, because then you're creating another foot of maneuvering for those 2 vehicles next to this parked car. So at a minimum, if you do alternative 1, you should be putting that extra foot into from between the curbs. So I would like to make some comments on, let's see, what was alternative. Let me see, I have to find alternative 2. So the buffered bike lane. Yeah, so, you talked about parking demand. That's another thing. So I want to make a comment, another comment. So when I go to meetings at the Hayward City Council, they start out their presentations with their policies, their bike plan policy, their climate action plan. And one of the things that we need to do is to stop driving. We know that because 73% of our greenhouse gases come from driving. So catering to driving by insisting on the adding parking or maintaining parking, and then maintaining travel lanes and all that type of thing are not going to reduce greenhouse gases. And so I think alternative 2 would be actually fantastic. We get rid of some parking on one side, and then we can have some better bike lanes, and those bike lanes would work well. With the one against the curb is particularly good because there's no door zone, so it's a particularly safe one. The downhill direction, that's perfect the way you have it drawn. So I think that's actually a very viable and good alternative. And that's something that you might get students to actually use because especially the one against the curb, you know, going downhill, you know, and it's a much wider. So I think that one presents a better story for the students, especially because remember, this is the high school and the middle school that it connects, and these schools are the most. We have the greatest potential to influence those people getting to school because those people generally live near the schools. Not everybody does, but quite a few of the students live within cycling distance of the schools. And we have e-bikes and scooters. And I see lots of kids on scooters now, and I see them on the sidewalk on Castro Valley Boulevard, not in the bike lane. So, so I think alternative 2 is very viable. So alternative 3 we've already talked about. I think that's actually the best and most likely to be used by students and parents to allow their students to be on it. And then there's alternative 4. Alternative 4, you're going to have to do something about that downhill 13-foot lane because you know you can increase the parking lane and you can do a few other things. You know, you have a 1-foot buffer on the bike lane that can be wider, but you know, the wider the lane is, the more difficult it is for a cyclist to take it, you know, to maintain it. But I would say the thing about the alternative 4 is just as you said, you know, people have to ride in front of cars, and not that many people like to do that. I've been riding up and down Higher for years. I've been taking my daughters to Canyon Middle School for their you know, practices and training, and it's very stressful. Higher is so stressful, but we do go down the hill pretty fast. But you know, we're in good shape. You know, there's people who aren't athletic and don't want to zoom down the hill. So anyway, to summarize, alternative 1 is the worst of all of the alternatives, in my opinion, and especially if you're going to rob the 1 foot from the, you know, curb to curb and push, you know, squeeze a cyclist in a 5-foot lane right next to a 7-foot parking lane, which means the door just comes right out of that 7-foot. And then there's no maneuverability of the traveling car. And he's going to get upset when the cyclist is riding on the line, you know, on the, you know, left-hand side of the bike lane, so he doesn't get dinged. And then he doesn't have, you know, space to maneuver around the cyclist. So, so that's really bad. At least you have a little extra room on from Madison to Center. But there's a few other things. These are just the topics. I just want to say there's a number of details, including that free right-hand turn at Center. You know, we need to do something about that because that's very dangerous. I've had a lot of difficulty, and we also need to talk about. I'm going to relinquish now. But we need to talk about how to go up and over the hill. I call it Higher Hill. And there are, you know, there's a curb cut that you could put in the sidewalk there in the eastbound direction. I've requested it in the past. And then that would allow actually cyclists to go on the sidewalk instead of having to take the lane up the hill and go super slow. And I would do that because that's what I do coming the other direction. I actually ride on the sidewalk. And my kids always have ridden on the sidewalk. So that would be, you know, another thing. So I'll let other people talk now, and then I'll get back to, you know, the discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce. I believe Crystal had her hand up next.
Thank you.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Crystal.
thank you so much, Carl, for the presentation. I just have a few comments. I agree with Bruce that alternative 3 is ideal. I know Higher just gets super congested, especially during school hours. And for cyclists, I think it just seems like it'd be less stressful of an area to navigate. And then also from a transit perspective, it's also ideal because it provides more usable sidewalk area for the bus stop. For alternative 3 also, I agree with the comment that you had about the safety consideration. Just wanted to mention that from we've heard a lot from transit riders and pedestrians, particularly those who are blind or visually impaired, that sometimes they encounter situations where cyclists aren't slowing down at these potential conflict areas. So I'd be curious to hear about what safety considerations will be implemented if and when the project gets to that point and if this alternative moves forward. But another thing, just general note that I wanted to note, it's better for transit riders in wheelchairs or with strollers or carts when there isn't a planter strip or a landscaped area at the bus stop area specifically, since it's just easier to navigate the area when the sidewalk is paved and clear of any obstruction. So if for any alternative, if at the bus stop area, there's just no landscape or planter strip, that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. And next we have Dan.
Carl, thank you for the presentation. Appreciate how you went through each alternative and kind of gave us insight into your thinking, how you came up with each alternative. Wanted to start with the pedestrian side of things. I had a couple questions for you. One location, you have the Kelly Canyon Creek passes, I believe, by a culvert, passes beneath the roadway. I noticed the top of bank is quite a bit narrower there. How would that impact the cross section?
Yeah, so in that area, you're right, there's a creek and there's a culvert running there. There's also a fence that's kind of almost acting out as a keep out zone. So in that area, the current design will be proposing a bulb out, and that bulb out at its current design will be encroaching into a parking lane. So
I see.
essentially it's going to take out a parking lane. So it will eliminate a couple of parking space in the area, but the bike lane most importantly will remain in place as currently designed.
So that the bike lane would, wherever it ends up, would continue straight through and the curb would come out towards the bike lane over the culvert.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And for the overall product in general, I was trying to follow, are we replacing all sidewalks through the whole corridor?
No, so the existing corridor from Redwood Road to Madison, that's about an 8-foot wide existing sidewalk.
Okay.
And then from Madison to Center Street, that's about a 7-foot wide sidewalk. Our goal is to kind of keep in place any ADA compliant sidewalk that's along there. However, there
Okay.
are existing driveways that are not completely up to ADA code, so we will be looking at where the score marks are located and kind of making our conform points and rebuilding the driveways there to ensure ADA
Okay.
compliancy.
So you'll check the cross slopes where anywhere it doesn't meet the ADA requirement. And I noticed also that there's some of these driveways are very old that are
Right.
and they're in the sidewalk area and they have the old style where the slope goes all the way from the back to the front. So the product will update those.
Correct. The project will update those,
Okay.
in the areas where it needs to be updated.
Okay. Okay. So also, so there's 3 transit stops. There's 2 in the westbound direction, and then there's 1 in the eastbound direction. Starting at towards Center Street, there's a pretty large like bus duckout. Is that going to stay?
Yeah, so I think you may have met the previous engineer that was working on this project, Elizabeth. I've seen coordination with Elizabeth and Crystal, and
Okay.
it was decided that we would follow an Omnitrans bus turnout configuration, which is going to update that bus pad to a 40-foot taper length with a 60-foot straight length, and then a 10-foot wide bus pad in that area. So it will be updated to kind of fit AC transit
Okay.
requirements.
Yeah, because at the other 2 bus stops, which is at Madison Avenue, um, depending on which alternative is selected, I I believe we need to have, that the lift, the ADA lift that comes down, I believe we need 8 feet. So now I'm sure if we did come up with a 7-foot sidewalk solution, but at the bus stop at Madison for both the westbound and eastbound, you'd have to expand that. Or if you had an 8-foot sidewalk, then I think the problem is solved. At the-
Right. So, oh, sorry,
yeah,
you
go
can
ahead.
continue. Oh, I was just gonna say, at the downhill end, which is westbound, so we're gonna be proposing a 10-foot wide sidewalk that kind of eventually tapers off into a
Oh,
seven
okay.
foot wide sidewalk to kind of match existing conditions and the existing structures that are out on site. So,
Okay.
closer on the front end of the bus, we'll have more of a 10-foot wide. And then as
Mhm.
we kind of head towards the back end of the bus, that'd be around 7.5 feet. And the existing condition of the sidewalk right now is somewhere between 7 feet to 7.5 feet wide. And there's a
Okay.
sign there as well, and we would generally relocate the sign as necessary and place it in a ADA accessible spot if it currently isn't. On the uphill end, which is the eastbound,
Yeah.
currently from what I've seen, that there is a landscaping strip that Krista was talking about. In our latest design, we would remove that landscaping strip, but similarly, the existing corridor and the existing sidewalk of that section is 7 foot. So we're kind of matching to the existing conditions there as
Okay.
well. But the
Very good.
landscaping strip will be removed, and we'll have a red curb uh, kind of along that bus route as well, because I've noticed that there are people parking
Mhm.
along that bus sign.
Now, one thing that's very different about the eastbound Higher Avenue bus stop at Madison, it's it's almost 200 feet. It's like 180. I measured it, 185 feet from the crosswalk in the eastbound direction to the bus stop. Is there any way that bus stop could? I saw there was another property closer to that crosswalk. Could the bus stop be moved further west, closer to the crosswalk? You know what I'm talking about? On the
Yeah, it's kind of like right here in this
yeah,
location.
it's
If you can
really
see
far
my
away.
screen. And I see that the bus layout is kind of around this area. So correct me if I'm wrong, Crystal, but just kind of looking, it seems like when the bus is turning, it doesn't have enough turning radius to kind of straighten out at this location, hence why it was pushed down a couple of 100 feet further. So it kind of allows the bus to straighten out a little bit more.
That's
I
Um,
correct.
see.
okay.
So
Yeah, so
the bus doesn't continue to the high school.
It
It
goes
goes.
along Madison.
yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
hmm
okay. Okay. Okay, so that's the reason why. So I'll let Crystal, I won't ask her directly, but I heard what she said. So in this case, it would make sense to have the eastbound bus stop where it currently is. I know it's more open there. The other one would be more, there's like a fence, it's kind of constrained, but it just seemed like it was kind of far away. Um, Now there's 3 crosswalks, one at Alana Road, one at Forest Place, and then one at Madison Avenue. And then the one at Alana has a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. Is there any change to any of those situations?
Yeah, there's technically I think 4 crosswalks, so there's one
Oh,
along Redwood Road as well.
oh,
So
okay,
that's the one that's near the high school. For that one, it's gonna be a yellow ladder crosswalk, and it's gonna
okay,
be restriped to replace the existing. For Forest and Madison, those two both have existing old, I think just kind of continental sidewalks. So those will be replaced with a ladder crosswalk as
okay,
well. For Alana, there is an existing RRFB there. Our proposal for this design is to really take that location and adjust the grade as necessary vertically, just because the way where our ramps are located, they're still within the range of pressing the push button assembly, but the
okay,
existing push button will be updated to more of an accessible pedestrian signal push button system. So that would be the only change, but the RFB itself will more or less remain in place.
okay. And you said they'll all be yellow, or are we in, I don't know if we're in I forget the exact radius for the school. Are we too far away for that?
Yeah, just based off of what we see from the MUTCD, we'll
Okay.
definitely follow the correct guidelines. But
Okay.
for Forest, Madison, and Alana, they are white. They are out kind of within the MUTC guidelines that we're following, and we can always definitely double check that to ensure that we're complying.
Okay, I'll apologize. My dog's barking. The janitor just came by. Sorry. Maybe I'll let Phil talk for a sec. I want to talk about the bike lane, but I'll pause here.
Okay, Bruce has his hand up again.
Yeah, so again, I just want to remind Public Works that the goal here is to actually get people out of cars and on the bicycles. So we should be making our selection based on whatever is going to, maximize that. But I also wanted to say the planters, you have them as 3 feet, and I know that they're much narrower on Santa Maria, and I think they're 2 feet wide. So I think there's a 6-inch curb and an 18-inch cut. So it seems like that would be, is it possible to make that 2 foot wide planting strip, and then that will make more room for the sidewalk?
Right, I hear you there. A huge reason why it's 3 feet. It's not just for the tree wells or the planters. It's for all the above ground utility structures there as well. So there are PG&E poles that are almost 2 feet in diameter. So for placing that within the 3 foot planter strip, that kind of almost gives a 6-inch buffer on both sides. So there's that also to take in consideration. It's a utility section, so that's where all our driveways are going to be located as well. So in order to kind of meet grades correctly and to make sure cars are not bottoming out, 3 foot is I think a comfortable width for cars, and to get the allowable slope to get a car up the driveway apron and onto their driveway.
But don't you have that same issue with the driveways in Santa Maria?
Quite honestly, I wasn't an engineer on Santa Maria, so I can't answer that. It's every project kind of has their own unique constraints and challenges per se, and most of the times we're doing our best to work with the existing corridor that we have there.
Yeah, maybe you could take a look at Santa Maria, because they're much narrower, and I assume they have a similar issue with the sidewalk geometry, but and they have utilities as well. So they have, sounds like all the same stuff. So if you could take a look at Santa Maria, that sure would be useful, because it would be nice to have a little more space to walk. Yeah, I also think that we generally need more trees, because you guys seem to be a little bit tight on trees for some reason. Santa Maria should have way more trees than it does. That's what really makes a place. In Singapore, they're famous that the guy who was the prime minister that started, at the beginning of Singapore, he was big on landscaping, and really made Singapore look nice, and it's really added a lot to Singapore. The other thing is the pedestrian ramps. You guys have a tendency to, especially with bulb outs, waste a lot of money on the bulb out by putting the ramps in the middle of the bulb out. So you're defeating the purpose of the bulb out, which is to reduce the distance that the pedestrian's exposed to traffic, and also the other goal is to make the pedestrian more visible. But where you put these ramps defeats those two goals. So we're spending a lot of money on adding bulb outs, and you don't get the benefit. So I suggest doing the dual bulb outs, or dual ramps, and even not doing a bulb out, because you can just not do a bulb out and do 2 ramps, and you can still have better visibility and shorter walking distance than what you guys generally produce. So I think that please look at double pedestrian ramps. And then, you know, again, at you know, once you get to the end, that center, and you're eastbound, and you want to go up and over the hill, again, I suggest having a curb ramp so that you can get up on the sidewalk, but also maybe something to get in front of the traffic if you're not going to do that, like a bike box or something. So I've had historically lots of trouble in that area because, you know, drivers just don't want to sit behind a bicycle going up 5 miles an hour over that hill. They want to, you know, pass, and they make dangerous passing decisions, and they get close to the oncoming traffic, and they get close to the cyclist. And so maybe, you know, I mean, a bike box is not going to solve that, but the ramp, you know, pedestrian ramp could solve that. Let's see. I think I guess that's it for now. Again, you know, we need to try to design to our policies, the climate action plan in particular. You know, the bike plan calls for class 2, but we should be doing what's best and not what's the minimum. So yeah, please give some space to the cyclists. If you're not able to change those curbs, then take parking away. Thanks.
Thanks again, Bruce. Dan has his hand up.
Michael, did you, it was a talk about alternatives. Did you have something, Michael? Are you good? Michael Williams? Oh, and maybe I'll defer to
No, yeah, it wasn't me. I didn't have anything
okay.
on this.
Maybe
Bruce's discussion, since I'm here, though, I will say, kind of going back to something I said a year or two ago, some of the issues like things like the curb ramps and how they're done. I mean, this is new to Carl. He hasn't heard this, and I don't even know if Maritoni was here, but you know, remember I said maybe like sometimes just this group doing a session, you know, basics 101 or something, looking at new ways curb cuts are being done, or what some of the constraints are, you know, with double versus, you know, on the corner, those kinds of things, I think will be helpful. So then when we get into them and find them, we kind of are coming at it. Otherwise, it's just Bruce or someone saying, oh, this doesn't work here because that's that. And then someone else says, oh, we designed it for this. It'd be helpful for us on some of those things like that. I think curb cuts and bulb outs are one of those items in particular that can, you know, they have a lot of dynamics to them, and there's new, better practices. And it's like, it's not always being implemented. I'm not saying by the agency, I'm just saying be helpful for us to know some of those things as a group.
Yeah, I understand, and I definitely hear you on that one. Definitely along Center Street, there are a lot of underground utilities that we have to consider, and above ground utilities that we have to consider as well, right? If we were ever to add a curb ramp or add any bulb outs for the curb ramps, we have to think about how it affects the underground utilities and the above ground structures as well. And that's always a challenge with itself, as you stated.
Okay, Cindy Torres has her hand up. Cindy, did you want to speak?
Yes, here I am.
Okay.
Sorry. So I was wondering why you didn't have another alternative to option 3, where there's parking only on one side of the street. I like 3 because of the divided bike lane, but I think that, you know, you can get away with parking on one side. I live on Hampton, where the streetscape was done in 2010, and that's exactly what we have. Fortunately, at the time, we weren't talking about bike lanes back then, and so we have 7-foot sidewalks on both sides, and we could have had smaller sidewalks and put a bike lane in dedicated on one side. And so when they did the plan on our street, they narrowed the street to put in the larger sidewalks. So the idea, we were told, was for it to be traffic calming if it's a more narrow street. And unfortunately, like I've said in this group before, you don't change behavior. People still treat it as a freeway. And it's really ridiculous. And so I can't imagine having that and having parking on both sides of the street just for the visibility, and we're close to a school. And so I say I'm not fighting for parking for anybody anymore. We need to get out of the cars, and we don't have to have, 2 cars for every person. Find another way, and for the safety, in order to, work against the safety of everybody else, besides having a car parked on the street. So I would like to see another alternative to 3 where there's parking on one side only. The other question I have is, are there going to be bus shelters or seating? And how would that fit into any of the designs? Would there be room for that?
Right. In terms of the bus shelters and seating, there wouldn't be. Most of the 2 of the bus stops are kind of along a 7 to 10 foot wide sidewalk. On the other side, it's a 7 foot wide sidewalk. And then on the upside where there is a pullout, we don't have a well, we did not design for a shelter either. So, if that's something that is of interest, we can definitely kind of take a look at it and see how feasible it is. Likewise with removing parking for alternative 3, I think all of that kind of goes back to how the community feels about all of that as well. It is, we have to take everything into account as we're doing these kind of projects and take all the users that are using it, all the businesses and all the schools that are within vicinity, right? So the parking is useful for students as well. I understand that we should be getting our bikes, maybe driving less, but I think at the same time we still have to think about the community as a whole and the
Okay, yeah,
best way
okay,
to
yes.
balance it amongst users.
Okay, I don't think it's going to be an option, in the future with the amount of infill housing that we have and everything. All the streets are going to be at a standstill before we know it. So we can't just be looking at it. People need to park their cars. We need to find a way to move on our streets. I disagree with it saying we have to go out to the community. How are you going to do that? I was on the Realign group and lots of focus groups for AC Transit, and there's been a big outpour of people asking for shelters and seating. And they're redoing Mission. They redid Ashland. They're putting in a seating for those things. If you take one line that goes through Cherryland and Ashland, there's no seating. There's no seating for public transit, for AC Transit, no shelters. And so to say that you're going to go out to the community and ask, well, why aren't you working with AC Transit and all these other agencies to tell you the information's out there? The community outreach has been done. So to start over again when that information is there and take that into consideration when you are redoing these streets is important.
Yeah.
Why the information is there. So you go out to a group of people who don't use AC Transit, and they're going to say, well, we don't need them. Go to AC Transit and ask AC Transit about the input that they've received. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dan had his hand up again.
Yes,
You
so I
have
wanted to cover the 4 alternatives. So I feel the best way to move forward is alternative 4. But before we go to that one, I want to just say a few things about the other ones. Alternative 3, the issue with that is the way it's drawn here. We're bicycle and pedestrian advocates on this committee, and we want to see these things get built. And so the power poles would have to move. We used to say it takes 1 year. I don't know I haven't tried to move one in a long time. Maybe it takes 2 years. I don't know how long, but you'd have to move all the power poles to build what's drawn here. And the sidewalk, which is extending out now, I believe that's 11 feet. You'd have to lower the curb probably 3 or 4 inches. So the whole street would have to be torn out and rebuilt potentially. I haven't seen all the grades, but this product way more expensive. And we want to see an improvement on Higher Avenue. We want to see a project go forward. So I think I would not recommend going forward with alternative 3. Alternative 2, real quick on that one, removing parking on one side is not something I believe the community would support. And I don't think it's realistic for a residential neighborhood to remove all the parking on one side. So I think it's simple as that. Alternative 1, Carl, a couple things about that one I want to mention. So you see how the bike lane and parking is 7 plus 5, which is 12. Kind of rule of thumb, if you can't get at least 13, the bike lane just doesn't work. I think Bruce kind of said it rather well about being trapped between the parked car and the moving vehicles. 12 is kind of a rule of thumb is it's just too narrow. And I think that alone. The other concern I see here is when you get down to 7 on the bottom section, when you get down to a 7-foot sidewalk, if you ever were going to put street lights in, I think the way the math works out with the base plate on the street light and the ADA clearance, you got to have 7.5. Maybe if you could do a variance on the setback, but with everything crammed in there, I do believe you need to have a 7.5-foot minimum. I could be wrong about that, but the bike lanes, they become so narrow and constrained that they don't function like a bike lane should. Whereas if you go to alternative 4, this is the one I think is the best way forward. It looks like Stanton Avenue, which is kind of a similar design challenge where, obviously, Carl, you didn't want the street to be this narrow. It's not your fault, it's just what you're left with on this retrofit project. And when you have the space that's remaining, it's just like Stanton Avenue. You have a prevailing uphill in the eastbound direction. And I believe if you on the MUTCD, those buffers are actually because you measure the buffer from the outside, it's actually 1.5 feet. So it's a legit buffer. I am kind of intrigued by the thought of getting another foot into those buffers from the downhill lane. I'm not 100% just standing right here right now. I'm not 100% sure about that, but that is an intriguing idea. I know the symmetry was a question. I don't feel the crown has to be exactly in the middle. If you actually calculate if the cars are driving and the center line's one side or the other, if you actually calculate the delta when you get up to the middle of the street, it's flattish. I don't think there'll be a big difference. So I don't think it causes a big change in your grading. Maybe not even at all. I can't say for sure right here, but I think this is it's not a huge change. I think this might be the way to go forward is with the uphill bike lane, just get this project built,
Okay, thank you. Bruce has his hand up. Before I go to Bruce, did want to say that we do have 3 hands raised for public comments, and we do have 2 more agenda items to cover. So Bruce, if you want to go ahead and speak.
Yeah, I want to say on alternative 3, I want to challenge Dan's idea of. I get that it's going to take longer to build, but we already have. We've been already building those, right? We build them on Mission and on Llewellyn. So this idea that we can't do it is not correct. And that is definitely the solution that like the students are most likely to use. So what we really want to go for is the solution that's going to get the maximum number of people out of the cars. And I also want to make a comment about balance. This idea of balance, it's like a false like a false equivalency thing. We need to have all these parked cars. For 100 years, things have been totally out of balance, and we have not been, accommodating cyclists. And now the balance is to maintain everything for the car. So that's not a balance, So balancing is like a compromise or something like that. So this idea and this idea that the community is against removing parking is also incorrect. The only people that are against removing parking are those who are going to lose it. There's a few others that are also will support them, but in general, removing parking is better for those people who are using the road. So, and the majority of the road users don't live on the road, especially on a road like Higher, which is a very busy road. So, you know, if we want to do a balance thing and talk about balance, then you need to talk about the road users who don't live on the road. So, and there is intermittent parking here. So there is an opportunity to you know, it's not a full parking all the way down. So there's you know, a possibility to remove some parking. So yeah, I get it's politically unpopular, but again, we will never ever make any strides in getting people out of their cars, which is the goal. If we continue along these lines of let's maintain parking, you know, that's just, you know, it's never going to work. Thanks.
Thank you. Cindy, is there something else you wanted to add?
Yes, I absolutely agree with Bruce there. To not have bus shelters, to not have bus seating, to not have wide enough sidewalks for people to walk, just so someone can park their car is ridiculous. It's not looking towards the future. If I recall correctly, Higher has the lots there are wider and most likely have at least double parking garages, so that there is room, there are deeper lots there that they can park cars on. If you were able to, in 2010, to approve the parking on only one side of the road, most of Hampton has single car garages, so they don't have as many options. So I don't agree. I agree with Bruce that it's wrong to assume that people would be against that. And I don't think any plan should go forward without looking, like I said, speaking with AC Transit and getting the input about bus shelters, not just the buses going through the community, but how the people there are served. It is an equity issue. Thank you. And to rush a project to say that we want to get this built, it would cost a lot more to redo something, which we'll never get back to anyway, the way things are going. But do it right. Do it right. Or why bother? Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Any more comments from the committee before I move on to public comment?
I just want to say, I think that's right. If you know, the idea of building something quickly, if we don't have the ability to change it in the future, then it doesn't really matter if you build it quickly. So it's really better, build it correctly thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we will move on to public comment. I believe Stephen Dunbar had his hand up first. Stephen Dunbar, are you ready to speak?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, you have 3 minutes.
Excellent. All right. Hello, BPAC and staff. I am not a resident of the Hayward area anymore, but I used to be. I speak here as a board member for Bikey Space only. I'm here to give some advice. Bikey Space staff regrets they're unable to attend tonight. I am not going to comment on alternative 2, as I feel that's inappropriate for my role here. I wrote this comment on the corner of Forest and Higher. I was at Top Tie up until about 3 minutes ago, and now I'm at the BART station. I just rode through Hayward to try their new bike lanes today, and then came up here and rode back and forth on Higher a few times. First, I'd like to say having the cost information and where the sidewalk is to be replaced versus added would have helped me make better comments. It was a little unclear to me, and so hearing what you all talked about over the last few minutes, I made some small edits. A few weeks ago, I sent an email to staff recommending they try the uphill bike lane, which is alternative 4, and downhill Sharrows. Your current design shows 2 minimum width, 5-foot bike lane sects to minimum width travel lanes that you've already talked about. And there's, pretty significant slope here, as you've all mentioned. Even on my lightweight turf bike today, I was below 10 miles an hour on a lot of Higher. and cars were traveling at 35 miles an hour, some at 39 on the feedback sign, and some even faster where the feedback sign stops telling you how fast they're going. I do stand by my recommendation that alternative 4 is clearly superior to alternative 1. However, I did ride down Mission Boulevard on the way to hire the new northern section near Rose Street, which has a non-standard 4-foot bike lane against the sidewalk, as alternative 3 does. Even in that really high frequency commercial corridor, I think it works as well as anyone can hope for the constraints that are there. And with similar driveway distances here as Mission, but with a lot more frequency of use, I think alternative 3 would work here, even with the grades. I know this involves staff doing a lot more work and cost, but you're already spending millions on these sidewalks already. The class 4 lanes would also improve pedestrian crossing distances as well. I can't tell you exactly where the cost argument really lies here, what we're talking about. If you delay to do it right, I don't know how many years that really takes. You could perhaps consider doing class 4 where it doesn't require moving the PG poles, and alternative 4 elsewhere. I believe you will still have teenagers riding the sidewalks or riding against traffic with the staff recommendation, like I saw today multiple times. So I think alternative 4 with some modifications is superior to alternative 1, and alternative 3 is superior to both if you can figure it out and afford it. I thank staff for their analysis, and I understand why they got to their recommendation, but I disagree that an all minimums class 2 lane accomplishes the goals that they spoke to at the beginning of their presentation, given that high school riders will be biking at the same time that drivers will be in and out of their cars. Thanks for your time. By the way, the speed feedback sign west of Central was not really working very well. It seemed to be like the backup battery was dead. So take a look at that. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we had CV Science. You're ready to talk?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So as you can see by the Trojan brain, I work with high school students a lot. I, actually interface with them quite a bit, and I'm able to pick up their thoughts on public transportation, as well as as well as their thoughts on their own safety. And this includes a kid who actually was run over, or whose bike was run over. In addition to the multiple accidents that have happened in higher back in 2020, 2019 or something like that. So yes, I agree. We do need to do something about safety on higher. The status quo does not cut it. Alternative 1 is essentially the status quo, and I would say, yeah, you've got the room, make it count, and take the time to make it count. I fully appreciate the comments made by both Cindy and Stephen Dunbar that you can't rush, the safety aspect of these things, and we've got to take the time to do this right. And doing it right is not alternative 1. It's also not alternative 4, although I agree with Stephen that alternative 4 is slightly better. It's I've ridden that area, and the downhill Sharrow, while exhilarating, is also not very safe. In addition, alternative 4, have you ever been caught in rush hour when the parents are trying to drop off all their kids or pick them up, and it's basically a parking lot on that road, right? And so what is the bicycle supposed to do? Just stop there with the rest of the car? There's nowhere for them to go because it's backed up all the way, well, practically to Redwood if you catch it wrong. So you've got to do something that's realistic, and that's not alternative 4. It's alternative 3, which is, I think, a nice alternative, and I think you can do things for visibility that make it work and that continue to keep people safe. Yeah, I worry a little bit about how you're going to delineate the difference between where the pedestrian should be and the cyclist should be, whether that's paint or dots or, something a little bit more substantial than that. Because people will actually get up to speed on a bicycle going downhill. But look, this is the one that's going to keep the kids safe, and that's going to actually help parents feel better about, sending their kid off to school on this bike route rather than with the e-bikes that they're all buying now, right? The kids want to ride to school, and that's just getting inside the mind of the kids. They want to do this. So you got to put an alternative out there that'll let the kids do that, and I believe that's 3 here. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have Roy. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. Carl, you've mentioned a couple of times parking and school, high schoolers, I assume you mean when you say school kids, high schoolers parking. I'm wondering kind of what evidence you have for that. Have you done some kind of survey that counts the number of cars there that belong to high school students? Because it seems a bit speculative to say, oh, we think high schoolers. So if you've got some facts behind that, I'd be interested to hear how many high schoolers are actually parking there each day. I actually live very close to this, about maybe less than a quarter mile just off Higher, so I do consider myself part of the community. I just want to make a couple of comments actually as feedback for Mr. Leary. I lived here 22 years. We've not had sidewalks on most of that street for 22 years and no bike lanes. We can wait to do it properly, and we would like it done properly. And I'm actually quite offended that somebody that lives 35 miles away would think that they can tell me what the community thinks and what the community wants. Carl, you also mentioned that this is going to the MAC. So this is interesting because this committee is supposed to be the experts providing feedback on these kind of designs. And yet this is listed as an informational item and there's no vote. When this goes to the Castro Valley MAC, and you could not find a group of people that are more violently against any kind of bicycle infrastructure, they will get to vote. There's something really wrong with that. So I'm wondering, how are you going to present the opinion of the BPAC to the MAC? Because that is really important that you do that properly, yeah? Incorporating their feedback into this design and then representing them well. The kind of litmus test of any project like this is, does it provide safety and does it actually help people to get from point A to point B? And it's pretty clear that, there's opinion here that option 1 fails the safety test, does not really provide a safe route for bikes. You can paint it green, yeah, your little kind of signs on the floor, but nobody's going to use it because people don't feel safe. But all of the options kind of fail on the getting people from point A to point B because this bike lane does not go anywhere. In particular, if you were able to bring back up your kind of helicopter view map, it dumps everybody going eastbound. It dumps you into one of the busiest intersections, in the morning in the end of Higher and Center, and just abandons you there. And what are you supposed to do? Because you're now faced with a hill to go up and come down to get to Canyon. Nobody's going to ride their bike to Canyon when they get dumped in the middle of an intersection. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. And thank you, Carl, for that presentation. We look forward to seeing this project built. Okay. Next on our agenda, I'm going to give you a quick update on the pedestrian bicycle trail master plan. It'll be just a quick update, just to let you know that the consultant selection process is complete. The successful consulting firm is being notified this week, and that we hope to have a contract executed before Thanksgiving and issue a notice to proceed before the holidays. Once we have a kickoff meeting and a milestone schedule, it will be shared with this group, but we are aiming for adoption prior to the summer 2027 board recess. And with that, are there any questions or comments from the committee?
Sorry, when was the timing? So they're going to be notified this week, you said, and then
Yes.
Sorry, and it'll start at when?
The letter went out today. And then we'll negotiate the contract with them and hopefully go to the board for execution of the contract, either end of October or beginning of November. But hopefully before Thanksgiving. And then so we can issue a notice to proceed before the holidays and maybe have a kickoff meeting with the consultant and get a milestone schedule for the update. But our goal is to have it adopted before the summer 2027 board recess. And that schedule takes into account that there will be a public review period and that we will most likely have to take it to the different municipal advisory councils.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I was just trying to get the summer of 2027. Okay. Thanks.
Any other comments or questions from the committee? Any comments from the public? No? Okay. With that, we'll move on to the last item on our agenda. It's to reschedule the December UCB PAC meeting. The next meeting falls on December 25th, and unless you all want to spend Christmas together, I'd like to try to reschedule that meeting. Right now, I'm looking at Thursday, December 11th. Susan has her hand raised. Go ahead, Susan.
I do. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to raise my hand in time. I have a question on the
Oh.
previous item, if I may.
Okay.
Thank you. I was wondering where you guys landed in terms of updating the ADA transition plan and if that was going to be a part of the scope for the bike plan update. I know that that was a question before whether that was going to happen.
That was included as an optional scope of the master plan, and it is our goal to update the ADA transition plan. So in our negotiations with the consultant, we will work that out with them on the possibility of including that in the scope, in the final scope.
Great, thank you. And then in terms of the December date, you may want to check in with Angelica. I think that there may be another meeting that may be planned for that evening.
Oh, for December. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I did give those dates to her and Dominic. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, they want to put an item on the agenda for December. That's the planning department. I'll let her know and see what we can do. But other than that, okay, Cindy, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I have a conflict with the 11th. Our Cherryland Community Association meets on that night.
Okay. If not the 11th, the 18th. How does the 18th work for
Oh, you said
everyone?
the 18th?
Either one, 11th or 18th. If there are not enough people available on the 11th, we can maybe look at the 18th.
Is the 11th is bad? Is that right? Is that a conflict?
It's the same night as the Cherryland
Oh,
Association
sorry.
meeting.
Okay. 18th.
Does anyone have a preference?
I don't see any directly in conflict right now. It's dangerously close to that. I know I'm leaving on the 20th for a family vacation, but I don't know of a conflict right now. That would be a popular
Susan?
Christmas party night.
I actually am on another TAC that has scheduled a meeting that evening, but I'm not sure that my attendance should be the deciding factor here.
Okay.
Of course. How about Monday? What about Monday? Is Monday? There tend to be less meetings on Monday nights. Just throwing it out there.
We'll have to see. maybe what we'll do is maybe I'll send out a doodle to
Okay.
Yeah.
committee members and see
would work.
which one would
Well,
be the best.
hard board
Yeah.
meets, you know, every other Monday, right, Michael?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm assuming I may not have anything or likely. Well, I shouldn't say that. I take that back. That's a good point. But I'll take my chances. So send out the doodle poll and then we'll
Yeah.
look ahead. I would have a backup if I had to take something. You know, Megan or someone could cover for that, so I'd still be okay, I think. But thanks for bringing that up.
I will send out a doodle this week, or tomorrow, so that we can pin
Mhm.
down a date and put that on the agency calendar. Okay, and I see there's public comment. Roy has his hand up. Oh, okay. Roy, did you want to go ahead and speak? Start over.
There you go. It's working now.
Okay.
No, I just wanted to remind you that the Castro Valley MAC meetings are often on Mondays. I wasn't sure the dates you were looking at, but there are Castro Valley meetings scheduled for December the 8th and December the 15th.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's all we have for tonight's meeting. Thanks again for attending. I think this is my first meeting where all the committee members are present. Nice to see you all.
Yeah, I have a comment.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, before you go. So we normally have on the agenda future items. So I would love to talk about level of stress is one of the future items. You know, and this gets into the higher, you know, the discussion of hires, level of stress. People you know, won't use something if they feel stressed. And so, you know, like Amber and I went to this course, and one of the things that they talked about was level of stress. And so we should be computing the level of stress for every configuration that we do, and there should be a value associated with each of these alternatives. And you should bring that to the MAC so that they can see that these because they hate bicyclists, they hate cyclists. But if they, you know, maybe they'll have some empathy if they can see, you know, this number level of stress, and you just all you have to do is Google it, and you can find you know, the formula for level of stress for cycling. But there's a few other things, wayfinding signs, and let's see, you know, little things that we've talked about, bike boxes at places like Matix and Mission and Redwood and CV Boulevard. You know, I just saw a cyclist take a left today, in fact, take a left from Castro Valley Boulevard up to north onto Redwood, and instantly was met with cars, you know, these drivers didn't know what to do with this cyclist in his way. And so, you know, that's a level of stress. But I guess that's not a bike. So going straight up north on Redwood is where you need the bike boxes, you know, on Redwood, but to get in front of the traffic. But anyway, so yeah, we have a number of things we should talk about in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and so I'll send out that doodle so that we could pin down the next meeting in December. And I'll let you guys know. Hope you guys all have a good evening, and thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.